This is Xeno Crisis, a game that will make you get down on your knees and pray to God for a good seed. Developed to fit within the limitations of the Sega Genesis, this is an impressive display of sprite art and sound with an old school game design that will kick your ass. I'm playing the PC version, but this has been ported to many different consoles, albeit with some caveats depending on the system, but it's pretty consistent overall. You start off by selecting from one of two characters. The dude has slightly more ammo, but the chick has slightly faster movement speed to start. I hate moving slow, so we're going with the Jill Valentine cosplay. Combat is pretty straightforward. You can shoot in 8 directions and have access to a dodge roll as well as a melee attack, but you'll quickly find that everything is a little bit stiff. Most of the time your moveset is reliable, but sometimes you'll get questionable rolls and melee attacks or accidentally fire your rocket launcher in the opposite direction because you moved before shooting and screwed up your shot. There's a bunch of special weapons to find. There's stuff like RPGs, shotguns, and flamethrowers, but they operate on a time limit, so once you grab one, you've got about 20 seconds to blast everything until it runs out, so just hold down the trigger and let all hell break loose. There's some health pickups that show up once in a while, but due to the random nature of the game, you will have to react accordingly if you don't get the things you want. Sometimes the game will give you a medkit when you're full health on the first level, and other times it won't give you a single special weapon at the end of the game because the RNG is in a bad mood or something. Hell, I didn't even know big medkits existed until like 15 hours into the game. They just kind of randomly showed up one run. This creates a bit of a frustrating experience because everything from the room layouts to the enemy spawns are random as far as I can tell. I can have an idea going into a room of what to expect, but based on which seat I'm on, I may have a great time blasting dudes with a shotgun, or the game will give me grenades for the next 8 rooms. It gets a bit hectic. There's a pretty wide variety of enemies too. They all have their own behaviors, and it's going to take some memorization to analyze a room and react accordingly. Prioritizing targets that can cause trouble is key here, because if you get too many shooty guys in a room, or things that pop up under your feet, you're gonna have an awful time. There's a bit of story told through the cutscenes, but it's nothing super special. It's more or less just the glue that holds the levels together and moves the game forward. Except for that one cutscene about the elixir, but we'll get to that later. Each level has its own little quirks too, but the game flows fast and frantically, just like this transition. Starting off isn't too bad. The perimeter gives a good indication of how the game is going to flow, running from room to room, shooting dudes, and gathering as many dog tags as you can along the way. Ammo drops when your bullet count is low, and enemies on the first level are pretty easy, so it's more of just a warm-up for things to come. This song rocks, by the way, and gets me hyped every single time. Shima is kind of a joke of a boss and goes down really easily, but man, what a cool looking sprite. Here we're introduced to the shop you visit in between levels. The dog tags you pick up are a form of currency that allow you to upgrade different aspects of your character, some being more useful than others. Since dog tag drops are kind of random, after the first level you may have enough to get some significant upgrades, or barely enough to scrape by. It's pretty inconsistent, so you have to have a game plan going into the next stage. I hope you like blue and green, because you'll be seeing a lot of it. The facility can either be pretty easy or really annoying depending on if you bought max power at the shop. This is about where you'll start figuring out about how important ammo is, because you'll be using a lot of it. It's pretty much a straight shot to the next boss where you'll face off against Death Viper. He'll chase you around the room and try to kill you by touch, but as long as you can avoid his body as well as the spikes he shoots out, you won't have too hard of a time. The dunes are where runs come to die. Things ramp up so quickly in the stage that I'm almost certain most people quit here. There's a ton of enemies on screen, and most of them shoot projectiles or travel under your feet. There's also these annoying plants that fire bombs at you that leave behind a gas cloud. Did I mention there's birds? Fuck the birds. You run around frantically trying to dodge everything. Bullets, bombs, birds, stress, life responsibilities, child support payments. Don't tell my lawyer about that last one. You're rolling all over the place, dodging through enemies to grab ammo, and that's when the sweat starts dripping from your brow and the fucking music hits like... Oh, but I bet you're wondering about the boss. Well, there isn't one. Oh look, more blue and green. The nest is eerily similar to the second stage, but the enemies are a bit tougher and more vicious. There's these 3 orb thingies you need to collect in order to finish the stage. Probably the most annoying enemies are these blue plants that shoot back at you when shot at, because they can pop up anywhere, and you might take a hit while shooting at another enemy because these things will pop up in front of you while you're shooting and mess you up at close range. If you guessed the boss would be Cthulhu, well then you must have more foresight than I did, because I for sure did not see that one coming. He's one of the only multi-form bosses, and it's really unnecessary because it just kind of pads out the fight. You just stand in a corner and shoot him until he's dead. I really hope you brought the gas mask. The maze is where the game stops fucking around. Imagine the dunes, but everything is faster, more dangerous, and the birds have fucking shotguns. My only advice is watch your back, shoot straight, conserve ammo, and never ever cut a deal with a teardrop. He goes invisible and fires a few shots, but he's honestly not that hard, just kind of annoying. Oh boy, here's where things get interesting. Do you love floor traps, zombies, things shooting at you from everywhere? The lab is a pretty straightforward keycard hunt, but the enemies are tanky and plentiful. The zombies have a neat mechanic where if they die, they get back up, but if you roll into them while they're down, they'll just splatter, skipping the second form. Making effective use of your melee attack in this level is almost necessary because of all the crap they throw at you. Shoot anything that shoots before it shoots you. Flamethrower dude is surprisingly easy. Like, sure, a giant 4-way rotating flamethrower seems intimidating, but just whip grenades at it and hope the floor turrets don't get you and you'll be fine. Bonus points if you manage to sneak a weapon into the boss fight. I made it. HQ. The final level. Good luck getting through this one. Not only is everything extremely deadly, now there's cloaked enemies and dudes with shields that will annoy the fuck out of you because they can block for certain enemies like turrets that shoot constantly, making for a very frantic experience. They may have rolled out the carpet, but we're the ones dying in red. It took me so long to get a good run into this level. The sheer amount of things that can and will go wrong is staggering. Patience is key, and I managed to get through by only using one continue. When I finally stepped foot into that final boss room, I just let out a big sigh of relief. I made it, but I'm surrounded. The main bad guy monologues for a bit, and he mentions that he was anticipating that you would make good use of the elixir given to you by Commander Darius. It contains nanomachines that can be used to control our nervous systems. And regardless of leftover continues, we die. Ah, fuck. So get this. If you continue even once up until this point, you cannot complete the game. The elixir that allows you to continue is woven into the story so that you need to get through on one life to beat the final boss. After the slog of attempts, after learning the ins and outs of every enemy and level and clawing my way to the final room, I'm met with one of the most disheartening gotcha moments of all time. My will shattered, my hands aching. I was defeated. So I did the only rational thing I could in this situation. I started over. I got better. I fought harder. With newfound resolve, I grinded attempts over and over again, getting a little better, a little further every time. I wasn't about to let some punk-ass game beat me when I worked so hard to get here, and I went into a trance. Every hour, a little closer, only continuing late into the game, dying pathetically just a room or two from the boss and having to start all over from the beginning. Every goddamn time, but I didn't give up. I couldn't give up until finally it happened. By this point, I'm hyper aware of everything. I'm feeling my pulse in my neck and trying to be as careful as possible as I go from room to room. I can't understate the tension in the room as I'm taking a lot of risks every time I try to melee something. It's survival of the fittest, and I've been training for 40 hours. I kick the door open into the final boss room, seething with anger. I gun down his goons and then it's me versus the man. Mutant, man-mutant Dr. Herzog himself. I'm gonna be honest, this boss was a pushover. It looks cool, don't get me wrong, but after all of this, I was expecting a little bit more, you know? I splatter him all over the floor with one final roll, and it's area clear. I did it. No continues. No mercy. As the ending plays, I'm left with a feeling of fulfillment. This was one of the most intense experiences I've had in a while. The action never lets up, and there's a lot of fun to be had. While I think it's pretty bullshit that the game requires you to complete it on a single life to see the ending, I can't help but respect the fact that this game sticks to its old school difficulty and design. While I could see this as being off-putting for a lot of people, it's also refreshing to see something so unapologetic that demands every ounce of energy and commitment. I have some gripes with the controls and the overall randomness of the game, and honestly, you might have an easier time than I did. The seed you're on can drastically affect how your run is going to go, because not only will the health pickups vary in frequency, but just simple things like having a good gun can make or break a lot of runs. I was really impressed with the overall presentation of this game, and the soundtrack is bumped out of my speakers on the regular now. There's so many good tracks, and the FM synth goes incredibly hard. The one thing I never figured out though was the point to rescuing survivors. They didn't seem to do anything aside from net me points, but hey, maybe that's what they're there for in case you want to compete for high score. I highly recommend you play this game. It's a wonderful time. Just know that you're going to get fucked worse than my sleep schedule trying to complete this.